So I've been playing Alan Wake. There's a lot to be said about games preservation, digital-only releases, always online requirements, and other things that I personally don't have too much to say about. The Secret World, for example, certainly looks pretty cool, but so do like another billion games. So, me not being able to play it isn't exactly the end of the world to me. Though, that said, still, however, seeing Konami and Square Enix slowly milking, ruining, and diluting MGS5 and Final Fantasy XV respectively does kinda make a boy wonder which exact purgatorial realm of playability those games will be in once I'm old. And similarly brain-gripping was the sight of a game that I'd been meaning to play for years being taken off of all digital stores over a Wii licensing dispute. And sure, the Xbox 350 version will more than likely float around till the end of times, and someone will probably also make the PC version crackable, piratable, and playable in some form or another. But as far as the Steam version goes, it is now officially a dead meme.
Here today, we gather around over the story summary of a game called Alan Wake. It featured a man, also called Alan Wake, who would venture off to the rural town of Bright Falls together with his wife, Alice. A vacation was what they wanted, but instead, a survival horror game was granted. You saucy little bitch.
See, poor little Alan suffered from a writer's block and was unable to produce his next bestseller, sans the sexy slut, an erotic fan story. He did have some dreams though about dark vignetting, grayscale, and some black stuff. And upon arrival at their wee little vacay cabin, said black stuff kicks off our story, daring to ask the question, would you like to see Stephen King's inhumanly freakish face make sweet, sweet love to David Lynch and his—
I want everything you've got or could find on a Mr. and Mrs. Douglas Jones
sensual voice while playing a bit of RE4? If your answer to that was yes, which it fucking should be, then boy do I have the game for you. Cause yeah, if Alan Wake isn't an amalgamation of all of those things, then it isn't. I mean, it has the writer tropes, the Washington pine trees, and the third-person shootings with the occasional forced environmental puzzle segment. It is a linear game, but only in the sense that it's clearly chopped up into chapters, each with their own objectives and paths to follow, but all of the maps are pretty darn big and contain plenty of secret little cubby cabins, campsites, and fuck huts packed to the brim with readable notes, radio broadcasts, ammo, and entire fucking TV shows. It's a really good exploring and looking at shit game, which just so happens to be my favorite type of game. Like, even though you're pretty much running down a straight path for most of the entire thing, it never quite feels like you are. The foliage obscures a lot, of course, but to me it mainly accomplishes this through its rather incredible render distance, really grounding the game in its own reality. Well, a few textures might disagree on that. Still, you can like stand on top of a mountain, look down, and see entire towns, lodges, and lakes that might seem like they're just window dressing right until you scoot your sexy little ass on down there and realize that what that mountaintop did was show you the area that you were going to explore during that chapter. Again, it makes the game feel grounded, immersive, other buzzwords, and all chapters do this to varying degrees. In terms of its overall structure though, it's quite similar to RE4 and Dead Space 2 in that it just keeps on giving with the varied set pieces and situations. One moment you're fending off birds while trapped on a cable car. The next sees you fighting dudes on a rickety drawbridge, and after that you scale a mountain and explore the creepy ruins up top where you get ambushed. That's more or less the pace that we're dealing with here. Just when the forced fuckery becomes too unrelenting, you get a nice daytime joyride. And right when you feel like the shooting has gone on for too long, you get to do a tiny little lift puzzle with some mild platforming. The first thing that hit me was how on point the atmosphere was. The fog has like actual layers to it, the trees and plants wave in the wind in a realistic manner, and the lighting is easily one of its strongest visual attributes.
I had to go to the lighthouse. I knew there was something important waiting for me there.
Rendering live silhouettes based on the excellently crafted levels, both highlighting and obscuring enemies and objectives, which is good as well, as its lighting is more or less its central mechanic.
My head pounded with a concussion. I'd never fired a gun outside a shooting range, and now I just killed someone. Or something. There were no bodies. They just disappeared. If I was dreaming, it felt real enough to make me sick.
Clearly taking inspiration from Kingdom Hearts, you guys, it is a game about light versus dark. During the day, the game is calm. You get to explore, talk to people, take in the scenery, and generally just have a pretty okay good time. But when the darkness comes, shadow hobos crawl out of the shadows, requiring you to put them down. However, you'd be wrong in thinking that you can just shoot them au natural, as they use the darkness as a type of weapon, cloaking themselves in it. And so you gotta like shine your flashlight at them for a bit to literally burn away the evil and make them vulnerable. Similarly, Alan also needs to stand within the light to regain his HP should your epic slow-mo dodging skills not suffice. And yeah, as I said, the entire thing revolves around the concepts of light and dark, and there's a lot more to it too than what I just brought up. Though, I'm saving my analysis of that for later. In any case, as far as survival horror games go, this one isn't really so much about the survival aspect. Admittedly, the devs did say not to consider it as such, but like, you don't get to decide how people interpret your creative work, and also, shut up. There's ammo aplenty anyway, as are the batteries used to restore the power to your flashlight. I guess it's more so a game about knowing when to use your shit in the heat of battle than it is about how much shit you have left to use. Like, said flashlight for instance refills automatically, but never really fast enough to be able to wait for it while dodging dudes. And while you could certainly reload your ammo till your heart's content without having to worry about how much you have left, doing so does take quite a bit of time. You can speed up the animation by continuously pressing the reload button, sure, but these hobos is fast and can only be held off as long as you keep your light on them. And so it turns into this fast-paced, high-octane tactical management fest in which you tactfully dodge out of harm's way while popping in a battery to then turn around, point your light, reload as you do, and then bust his shadowy ass the moment his darkness satisfyingly breaks with heavenly shatters. It's quite exhilarating, not gonna lie. The game may have borrowed RE4's approach to combat in a way, but it's nowhere near as tank-like. As I said, these dudes run fast, sometimes even straight up teleport, and will waste no time in cleverly coming at you from various angles, always driven to drive you into a corner. Not that Alan's a slouch either, but there's a lot of waiting on animation, so you really need to think fast and think smart. There were quite a few points where I died over and over, as I got to grips with the amount of dudes coming at me and which locations would be best for my cheeky reloads. Especially because you can't really take a whole lot of hits, always putting you right on the verge of dying. Add to that, the excellent sound design and music being fittingly chaotic and loud, not to mention the neat little contextual quirks like the gruelingly slow motion when you successfully dodge, or how you can physically feel your enemies stagger as you shower them with your shining god rays. It's pretty fucking great. The daytime sections, however, are like the exact opposite. They're very lively, I guess. Cars drive by, birds flutter around, and the trees freely blow in the wind. All interiors are rather richly detailed as well, having plenty of gubs and people to talk to too, and there's even some open-worldy driving sections where you can pull up at optional huts to ransack the place and, moreover, just to take in the calm-ass atmosphere. The coolest thing about all of this though, or it was to me at least, is that all these elements that make the daytime sections so chilled and welcoming are the exact same elements that make the nighttime segments so very oppressive. A wee birdo taking off as you pass by a pretty little lake, for example, is nice, yet that exact same birdo frantically skidding away from a dark dank bush is startling. The trees as well might softly dance in the wind during noon, but come fuck time, the damn things can barely keep their footing
3 feet.
as a violent storm ravages across the land. It feels like a very deliberate yin-yang thing that is subtle, and I like subtle. What helps with this as well is how realistic the forest actually looks. Much like the many interior, shit appears to be meticulously handcrafted. It doesn't feel like a map per se. As I walked past the various ranges of forestation, I couldn't picture the office guy taking out the tree brush going full roller coaster tycoon on my puckered ass. There aren't really any noticeably repeated bush textures, I guess. All pine trees kinda arch in their own unique way, and the grass feels incredibly dense and thick. If you think that these are weird things to comment on, that's fine, but when in even the super duper high-end Battlefield games, you can still kinda see how they just place these assets as they stick to the ground in a questionable fashion. I'd say that when considering the forest is more or less your main enemy here, it being brought to life this well is worth mentioning. Though this one tree did seem a bit suspicious, not gonna lie. But yeah, while the enemies you fight might just be some regular ass dudes, which is a bit meh, I will admit, the actual antagonist, i.e. this game's nemesis or pyramid head, is the entire forest itself. There's something uniquely ominous about that, like you can actually hear the trees breathe at times, or catch them screaming out in anger as they fall to the ground. It's all-knowing, omnipresent, and other pretentious terms highlighting the fact that whenever the game goes all... I ended up feeling pretty fucking intimidated. The game's physics and its visual prowess really shine here too, in my opinion. It can cripple entire buildings in real time, hurl fucking school buses and construction vehicles at your head, and those bits where the sky goes all deadly premonition are quite the visual spectacle. What with the darkness kinda making that ripple effect what you see during the summer while it's hot out, and the moonlight eerily disco-balling the scenery to shit.
Well, I was just outside for a breath of fresh air, and what a night. I know most of you are probably in your beds by now, but if you're still up and around, take a moment. Step outside for a spell and breathe in deep. The weather is absolutely still. The sky is crystal clear. It's like the forest is quietly breathing along with you.
And so, yeah, I can make no other conclusion than that this is a pretty good video game. Story-wise, it might be an odd duck, perhaps, with the voice acting being somewhat odd, the facial animations being downright fucking awful, and the fact that reality is an odd commodity here in Bright Falls. Like, shit's kicked off when Alice falls into the lake, Alan Wake jumping in to save her, only for him to wake up in a crashed car as he's guided around by manuscripts that list him as the author, strangely detailing story events as they happen before they happen or happening off screen, and once he finally makes it back to their cabin, it seems that it wasn't ever there in the first place. Ooh. I really dig that though. It's not so much a story about characters per se, being that all of them are either weirdly distant assholes or nothing but comic relief, but it is the mystery and the sheer absurdity of it all that instantly sunk its teeth into my dick. Those manuscripts that you find after that primarily, I feel, being that they kinda spoil some things as you play or recontextualize events even well after they've happened. You know how sometimes a story can be better when you already know about a certain out-of-context plot twist, making you look forward to it or anticipating how the plot is actually going to get there? Well, that's the crux of the entire main plot, more or less. And the, hopefully, on purpose, odd line deliveries contribute to this mysteriousness as well. And besides, it's not like there isn't any charm to go around either. It makes its influences very clear, to say the least, which also makes it feel like a bit of a lovingly made tribute to the horror genre overall. There's birds from the Birds, cabins from cabin horror stories, writers from the Stephen Kings, supernatural themes from the David Lynches and the Japaneses, mist and fogs from the Silent Hills, and of course goofy characters from the Twin Peaks. It's not so much on the nose as it is aggressively fingering up your nostrils, but a hearty good fingering it sure is. The only big dick flaw what I'd say that the game has overall is that it overstates its welcome somewhat. I mean, the damn thing's nearly 11 hours long, and during those 11 hours it feels like it builds up to an ending about 4 times over. Which is given pretty good reason why I won't spoil, but at times you just want them to go to the fucking thing that they were actually going to instead of crashing, burning, and detouring, leading to just another shoot bang after having just shoot banged a substantial amount already. Though, if you ask me, all of that's mostly minor, and it's certainly worth a play if you can still get your hands on it.